Introducing The Future of Sports Marketing, moderated by Chris Stone, Editorial Director, Time Inc.'s Sports Illustrated, Golf, and SI Kids.
Is this working? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Sports Marketing panel, which grew from a more modest 3 panelists to 6 panelists over the last week. But the way we're going to handle this is a 40-minute panel, and we're going to go down the line and ask some questions where each panelist will be able to expand on some of their answers. And in between, just to kind of change the pace, we'll ask some what I'll call lightning round questions, which will be questions in which they'll offer 1 or 2 word answers. But I think a good way to introduce everybody on this panel is really to ask the question, to really address this notion of the importance of sports in the broader marketing ecosystem. And I'll have you guys talk about it as a way to kind of introduce what you guys are doing in that space and who you are.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Ciccone, and I'm the Managing Director at RevXP. We are a first-market esports talent management and full-service marketing agency, basically in the space to help folks like you navigate the space. It's a few hundred million fans are participating, a lot of confusion, and that's why we exist. But one of the things that makes esports a really nice complement to sports in general is the community. It's such a huge community. It's a tight community. There is a lot of synergy between traditional sports and sports, which we'll get into in a bit. But more than anything, like I said, it's the community and that form of communication that brings everyone together.
Hi, everybody. Brandon Gale. I lead sports partnerships at Instagram. How many of you guys are on Instagram by show of hands? Cool. Awesome. So for us, sports is a huge priority and a major passion point for fans around the world. And as we work with athletes, teams, leagues, and media companies, it's really about helping them understand how do they reach the next generation of sports fans. We've got a really young demographic on the platform that loves to consume sports. And we know we have a large sports community on the platform. A third of the 500 million people who are on Instagram every month are following a sports-related account. So for us, we spend a lot of time really working with everyone in the sports ecosystem, whether you're an athlete, team, a league, or again, helping them get the most out of the platform, and really helping sports fans connect visually through Instagram to tell their story, to rejoice when their team has a major moment, and also to connect when their team maybe doesn't have a great moment, as we saw with the Euros, and unfortunately France not being able to deliver last weekend. I knew someone would do that.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Greg Johns. I'm Chief Digital Officer at Canvas Worldwide, and we're an independent media communications agency overseeing Hyundai and Kia media planning and buying. I like to think that the idea of selling cars and sports are two that go together like chocolate and peanut butter almost. They're really a foundation of what we do to connect to audiences. And they're a big part of both of the efforts of our brands. Kia having been the official vehicle of the NBA going all the way back to 2008. Done a lot of things with that league and its stars within. Hyundai last year became the official car of the NFL and a bedrock property for all of us, obviously. Really, it is about making a connection with consumers and really showcasing all of the things that are around sports, passion, loyalty. Those are things that we want both of our brands to really be imbued with. And sports is one of those big pillars that are going to allow us to do that, both in the near term and the long term.
Hi, everybody. Kate Johnson, Head of Global Sponsorship Marketing at Visa. How many have a Visa card in their wallet? Show of hands. So just to that point, for us, sponsorship, we've been a part of the Olympic movement as an example, for 30 years. And at that time, it really was a brand play for us. It was, using a sports platform to help build our brand over our competitors. At that time, it was American Express, who was the 1984 sponsor of the Olympics. And so for us, we use the platform of sport, whether it be FIFA, the Olympics, the NFL, new sports, interactive sports. We're looking at a lot of different things these days to really help our clients, because Visa doesn't exist without our clients. So making sure that your bank comes to Visa before anybody else in order to put that card into your wallet we have to be able to offer them something that they may not be able to get themselves, that they may not have access to themselves. So those assets for us are one major way that sport matters for Visa. Over and above that, more recently, it's been playing into kind of the product lens. And so really, following the path of a Microsoft alongside the NFL or, other brands who have kind of evolved their sports marketing strategy to consider how they can integrate and showcase their products across sports platforms. That's something as payment innovation and as the Visa brand starts to sit behind Uber applications and sit behind, your restaurant booking system, the Visa brand is kind of now more and more going to the background. So we're using these sports platforms and ability to showcase product in new ways across these great, mass awareness properties.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Torville, and I oversee brand partnerships for Fox Sports. In case you don't know, we're a content company. And really, for Fox, there's nothing more important to us than live sports. You as fans and consumers have, an incredible amount of content on demand every day. For our business to succeed, we're out securing the biggest and the best sports properties and finding opportunities to engage directly, personally, interactively with fans. And then that naturally provides a great platform and canvas for brands like Visa to partner and communicate and interact with all of you.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan Gadd. I'm with Taylor. I lead a lot of our digital sports initiatives. We are a traditional PR shop, but we've built a really strong digital team, particularly over the last 5 or so years. One of the things that we're working really hard to do is work with brands that want to get into sports in a big way, but do so with the mindset that they're leveraging the biggest opportunity that there is in sports. And for us, that's really tapping into that passion. I mean, you talk about why is sports important in the marketing landscape? Well, it's because you've got people that are very energetic, very passionate, and I think a lot of the people that come into sports initially look at that and see the bigger opportunity as just the size of the audience, and we try to help them understand that there's a bigger win there. It's not just about communicating a specific message or a brand attribute, but if you leverage this crowd correctly, you can really have a big impact on your brand reputation with them, and that's we do that through fan insights, making sure that we really understand not only the things that people are interested in within sports, but what are the things that make them tick emotionally, and how do we leverage that in a content strategy.
All right, first lightning round question. Rule here is you have to keep it to 5 words or less. You guys all saw the lightning round questions because remember, I promised you there would be no surprises here, right? Okay, good. First lightning round question, we'll go down the line, is in 2020, which sport will be the one marketers hold up as the one that they most want to emulate?
Drone racing.
Still the NBA.
Second with the NBA.
I'm going mainstream NBA, midstream Formula E.
NFL.
I like the NBA, I like the esports. I think they're probably at the top, but I would say, wait, 5 words. I'm going to throw golf in there. Watch the young athletes on golf.
This is where we yank you off the stage.
I'll remember next time, I promise.
Interesting. We're going to talk about the NBA in a second because we had a conference call on Friday, and even in subsequent conversations, it's what they're doing is something that people spoke very fervently about. But drone racing, because there's probably a lot of people here. A show of hands for how many people here know what drone racing is. Okay, a fair amount.
That's why we'll be talking about it more in 5 years.
But do you want to talk a little bit about the audience that? First, maybe you should share what drone racing is, and then wow the audience with the audience they've already acquired.
So, yeah, I mean, within esports, what we're seeing is the fans and the community really embracing a technology to facilitate communication and experiences with people within the community and then beyond it. And I think you're going to see the same thing with drone racing. I think we're all fascinated with flight. We're all fascinated with technology, and that's what drone racing brings to the table is, anyone can pick up a game controller. We're at the point where anyone can literally fly one of these vehicles around. And then again, it just gives it, within that sense of community, it gives them a shared experience. And because of the technology that's inherently involved, you don't necessarily have to be there to experience it, right? You can be anywhere to experience it. So we've seen that with esports. That's why it's gotten such global penetration in a very short amount of time. And I believe drone racing will bring that same kind of enthusiasm and same kind of shareability in a very short amount of time as well.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's fascinating, that audience in such a short period of time. I only heard about it for the first time a month ago. Well, the next question's already effectively been answered by the panel. I mean, it's like, who's doing it right? And in our conversations, we have a lot of conversation about the NBA. And I'll just kick it over to you, Brandon, to just kind of discuss what it is that the NBA is doing so right and why they look like such a sustainable success story.
Sure. I mean, I think if you look at the way they have sort of literally unleashed the entire ecosystem that surrounds them, not only themselves and their accounts when it comes to social and digital, but also thinking about the athletes and really allowing them to bring their personalities to the forefront. Whether it's someone like LeBron James who comes out of his social media blackout, and the first thing you see is him actually in a sort of selfie video hugging and kissing the trophy like it's one of his children, right? They've built these global personalities and really allowed their athletes to be themselves. And people come to Instagram for authentic content. And I'd argue no one does it better than NBA athletes. The next piece is if you look at their broadcast partners and their publishing partners, so Bleacher Report, Turner, ESPN, you see those outlets sharing in-game highlights in real time via platforms like Instagram. So you're literally surrounding the entire audience that you're going after through multiple surfaces. And the NBA fundamentally gets that. Which we work very closely with them also around tentpole events. So the NBA draft is another example, bringing in the next generation of stars. So you've got a guy like Ben Simmons, who not only see getting his hat and shaking hands with Adam Silver, but you see him backstage in a GQ portrait studio, which we worked on with the NBA afterwards, sort of letting his hair down, having a little bit of fun. So I really think they understand how to market their game globally, knowing that they may not be soccer, which is actually the #1 sport globally, and for us, it's a huge passion point. But they are the #1 sports league on Instagram by far and away.
Yeah, and I think the NBA benefited from a couple things. First, if you go back to kind of the earlier days of YouTube and sharing of content online, the NBA adopted an open stance to doing that. And you contrast this with someone like MLB Advanced Media, who for a long time kept more of a closed, you will come to our sites type of mentality. You saw what that did for the overall growth, the content sharing. NBA is also, in my opinion, a sport that really just by its fundamental nature lends itself well to digital. There's very short time highlights, which is very well in line with how people increasingly are consuming media, both online and in general. A lot of people hate this word, snackable content. That is the NBA in a nutshell, and it's also lent itself just on the basis of its very star-driven type of existence to also be very compatible with how digital media and media is evolving. Kevin Durant doesn't stay in Oklahoma City as long as he did without Twitter. Obviously, it wasn't long enough, but needless to say, they've benefited from that.
Just continuing on that, I'll actually keep it short. I think adaptability, just because I think a lot's been already said, but I think for us, I say NBA is kind of mainstream in the sense of they to the point of athletes getting it right. I think where, especially with a younger audience, where you can make sure that the athletes are much more organic in terms of their nature and how they're interacting with fans, I think that's where these properties really win. But then to my earlier point about Formula E, I think there's a real opportunity with some of these emerging sport platforms that are emerging very fast, whether it be drone racing or Formula E or the World Surfing League, which has completely reinvented itself in the last few years. A lot of these properties are evolving in a way that makes them more enticing from an adaptability point of view. You can try things as a partner with them more. They're catering to their audience in a way that I think some of these larger organizations are struggling to kind of move the ship to meet fan demands.
And I don't disagree that the NBA is doing it incredibly well. I do think you have to take note of Major League Baseball and their advanced media services. I mean, they're helping supply us, obviously, on the digital back end. I think their streaming capabilities are fantastic. They're certainly helping us produce and distribute local games at higher streaming numbers than we've ever seen. The All-Star Game, for example, did 79,000 unique viewers and 3.9 million minutes were consumed in the All-Star Game. that's record setting in that league, even when you see the TV numbers declining?
To me, it starts with the mindset. The companies that are putting the engagement, understanding their audiences, and delivering something to them the way they want to see it first above all else, they're the ones that are going to win. We've already mentioned the NBA, Bleacher Report. They are doing it extremely well. Bleacher Report has said openly, we don't know how we're going to monetize content on social yet, but we'll figure that out. And they do one of the best jobs of understanding their audience and the things that drive a reaction from them, and providing that. And I think when you have that mindset, it's more about nurturing that audience and growing your community, as opposed to trying to figure out how to monetize or set some other objectives that just aren't going to work on social.
I want to come back to the World Surfing League because, Brandon, you mentioned them on Friday, I believe, and Kate, you just referenced them here to much nodding of heads. You know, it's obviously not a mainstream. I mean, we can have a show of hands here. How many people have actually heard of the World Surfing League in here? It's a pretty big number.
We are in LA.
That's true. Fair point. But I just like you guys to talk a little bit about what you guys see them doing and how they've been able to kind of recreate, you know, their story.
I mean, I think for us it was kind of one of those classic things. They had approached Visa. You know, we're kind of in this phase in our own life cycle of our approach to sponsorship where we're actually really looking at new opportunities and willing to engage a little bit more openly through a certain filter. And I think the World Surf League came to us, and what they rolled out was basically how they're evolving their sport for a mass audience, so that it's not a closed niche community anymore. It's something where, I mean, including in investing in Kelly Slater's wave pool. I mean, what they're doing is actually making this sport now mainstream and accessible for all. You can actually stand in one spot and see the entire event, you know, end to end, and actually engage with it in a really meaningful way. And then even going further, you know, when they show us this wave pool at the center of all of that, you can, as a brand, as a sponsor, you can engage with your own audience in ways that don't take away from the actual spectating of the sport itself, but allow you to do something unique for those fans. So I just think they're really responding to the need for adaptability, where we personally have been struggling to kind of integrate new technologies, new ways of fan engagement with, you know, some of our longer partnerships.
And I'd say, you know, they've got events and really great destinations all around the world, and it's not easy for fans to get to those places. So how do you tell that story through a platform like Instagram, where they've got 2 million followers, which is just behind the NHL? Right? Who would have thought that a surfing league could be rivaling one of the big four, so to speak? And I think visually what they're doing is not only creating those sort of aspirational lifestyle shots, but they're also leveraging video, which I think everyone will say is exploding across all digital platforms. For us, we've seen 150% increase in time spent on video in the last 6 months on Instagram. So there isn't a day or an hour that goes by that you won't see some great wave video from the World Surf League on the platform, because they've understood when their audience is online, what they want to consume, back to that snackable content piece you mentioned. And, you know, they've got great personalities as well, like Kelly Slater. The list goes on, and they're also promoting them much like the NBA does with their athletes. So they're taking bits and pieces from who's doing it well, but then also redefining it in their own light.
It's fascinating. Okay, second lightning round question. Careful, Dan, or we'll permanently revoke your lightning round privileges.
Do I get 6 or 5 words?
The media company to watch for in the next 5 years, other than Instagram.
Twitch.
Twitch.
By the way, I still have 5 or 6 words left.
And now, Dan, you go out of order. What are we going to do with you?
Oh, I thought you were kicking it to me.
No. We're going to start down here and work our way down. Go ahead, Brendan.
Bleacher Report.
I'm not going to name a property. Augmented reality.
The Olympic Channel.
I don't know if they exist yet. In all seriousness, I would probably say Snapchat.
Bleacher Report has a right mindset.
Next question is, well, actually, we can follow up from that. Is like, who's doing it right from a media company standpoint?
Twitch. And if this is lightning
You're allowed
round
to
still,
expand.
so I can elaborate. No, I think you know what's come up a lot during today's conversation is technology, digital bringing new experiences, and I think there's a lot of agreement in this room that sport in general is evolving. Technology is actually affecting the sports, but then technology is also helping bring the fans a new and different way of looking at traditional sports as well as emerging sports. And the reason why I say Twitch is because they are constantly emerging. They're actually quite different from what they launched to be. And I think a lot of the ways that Twitch is approaching the marketplace in keeping an open mind, experimenting within the space, really listening to the community and what they want, you're starting to see that rub off on traditional media companies as well. So I think they've done a really good job so far, and I think they're evolving, and we'll see even more from them over the next few years.
I'm actually going to say there are some interesting teenagers who are using Instagram to actually create news platforms. So there's an account called All Sports News that has over 500,000 followers. It's literally a high school sophomore, I think, who between classes is reporting on breaking news, so contract deals, right, where Kevin Durant's going. And in some cases, he's got a larger following than some of the media companies that are out there. So we're seeing the young folks on Instagram actually take the content and package it in a way that actually resonates with their peers. And we're not talking about high-end production value. I mean, mostly it's sort of images pieced together and then a simple sort of screenshot of text. But he's getting a ton of engagement. So I would say as you think about sort of citizen journalism and using platforms like you see on social media, we're going to see a lot more folks sort of coming up and reporting on their own.
You know, I'll take a little bit of a broader approach since I deal with digital in general, not just sports, unfortunately, all day long. You know, the types of companies, and Bleacher's been mentioned a couple of times here, that are really shifting how they view the production of content around how consumers are quickly reacting to it are the ones that are riding the wave of the future. So you're talking the likes of a BuzzFeed, you're talking the likes of a Vox, where a number of sports properties lie in. You know, those are the ones that I think do foretell the future. I would also say that, you know, if we're talking about the likes of, you know, the Snapchats of the world, one thing everybody needs to keep in mind when it comes to digital is that, you know, platforms are kind of taking over everything. Shane Smith, who's the CEO of Vice, had a great quote a couple of months ago where he basically said, Facebook has basically gone out and bought hundreds of publishers without spending a single dime because of the way they control the content on their platform. And I mean, you know, we all have to think about that. It is a world where Facebook and Google via YouTube are really eating the internet at this point, and Snapchat is waiting in the wings. The companies that are doing it right are putting out content that they know people are reacting to, that they are figuring out what quality means, and a lot of this happens on Instagram as well, obviously, and they're adapting.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna lean into. I think the platforms that are offering just I think live content generation. I mean, there's just no way to avoid, to Brandon's point, of that being the most important way that people are able to now consume what it is that they want to engage with. And I think what that's going to force is things like, and this is why I actually said the Olympic channel, is because the jury's out, right? I think I'm really curious to see what they do there. Because I think one of the biggest problems the Olympics has to solve for is how they control that ability for athletes, for fans, for people to actually generate live content from the Olympic Games to share their experience for the mass consumer in a way that brands can actually engage with too, because that's the directions brand needs to go. So if the property is able to go that way, the brand can actually continue to go with the property in that direction.
Yeah, and I would go along with that theme. Technology really is synonymous with access in the world of sports, in my opinion. And I think companies that are finding opportunities to distribute content that is not seen in a traditional fashion is compelling content. So I have to give Facebook a bit of credit in terms of, you look at the world of 360, for example. I mean, that's incredible access to a fan that may not be seen in a traditional broadcast. So they've been a very good partner to us, Instagram as well. I think in general, the companies that are there to find new ways to deliver content, VR companies, augmented reality companies, they make us be better storytellers.
I'd say if monetization down the road is tied to the sponsorship dollars, if that's where it's going, I think you've got to look at companies like Facebook, Instagram, And I think in the future, Snapchat, the targeting that they allow the brands to come in with, the content that can be available there, and the ability to partner with people and do branded content. I mean, they're just set up so well to just to ride a wave of revenue coming in, and that's where the dollars are going. And quite frankly, we're seeing, as brands become smarter about the way they target content, we're seeing just unbelievable results when we build great content and figure out exactly who's going to react to it the best. It's Instagram, Facebook have been unbelievable for us as has Twitter.
Yeah, the topic of live content generation, is a really important one, and I think we've already seen what the Facebooks and the Instagrams have been able to do to publishing companies, But now there's, let's keep it in a sports context, what they could possibly do to television entities. And I think there's been a lot of discussion, it came up in an earlier panel, that in time you'll see Google or Facebook or Instagram compete for live rights. But when we spoke about this topic on Friday on our conference call, Brandon, you actually cautioned us not necessarily to go there just yet.
No, I mean, on the Instagram side, we have no ambitions to compete for live rights. I think this goes back to the snackable content piece, knowing that we've got a fairly large, younger audience that wants to consume in that fashion. So we'll continue to work with partners like Fox around Copa Centenario, where we saw them put in-match highlights on the platform that worked. So, Messi's amazing free kick goal against the U.S., which pained me to watch, but it was an amazing moment for me to catch on Instagram because I wasn't home in front of the television. So for us, I think that makes more sense versus going full-on media rights. We'll see how that unfolds over time. Twitter's clearly investing in that space heavily, but for us, it doesn't make sense right now.
I mean, Sarah, working for a major rights holder, to what degree has this entered your conversations, preparing for the possibility of fighting off a challenge from a new media upstart?
Sure. I think we feel pretty confident and secure, and that's why we have long-term rights deals in the biggest and best sports. But we would be really naive if we didn't consider every new company to be somewhat of a threat. And I think we're very open in those assessments. When you can find an opportunity to partner with an innovator and a new company, even better. But if not, it's that constant internal search to make sure that what they may be working towards is something that we've either already secured or that we want to come along and investigate. So I would say that we're not afraid, but we certainly are very much aware that anyone could be a threat at any point in time.
Dan, it looks like you want to chime in here.
The Twitter partnership with NFL is extremely interesting. I really want to see how that rolls out. But one of the things that I'm interested in is can they build something better than the broadcast? Is it a better experience for the viewer? And one of the things that I'm curious to see is I don't know, you haven't heard them talk about how they're going to enhance the interactive experience around the game. They've talked about selling ads. Well, TV's already doing that. I mean, I'm really, and part of that is because that's where the brands are. A lot of creative agencies are not good at creating interactive social content. They are good at delivering pre-rolls. So Twitter and Facebook and all of the other platforms have developed advertising tools to deliver pre-roll. If for them to evolve past broadcast, I'd want to see the brands start to understand there's a better interactive experience and start to put the money there and have the platforms build a better interactive experience around the game.
Yeah, I agree, and I just want to chime in here because what is the future of a brand's marketing partnership with a Twitter NFL game as opposed to one on a broadcast network that has multiple platforms, of which Twitter's part of that conversation? And we're constantly challenged. I mean, we have to face the fact that the value of the commercial is significantly declining or being questioned. So our storytelling devices, I mean, technology will play a role in how a brand can associate themselves. And then it's natural branded content. I mean, that's really what sports integrations are about anyway. I'm not sure that the ability to monetize sports in places like Twitter has as much profitability or as much opportunity for brands.
I was going to say, I don't think brands no longer want to be a part of kind of insert your brand here. They want to be a part of that content generation. And I'll give you an example is that the USA track and field Olympic trials just over the past couple of weeks. With Team Visa athletes, we actually facilitated a Facebook Live content generation between English Gardner and Ashton Eaton, who both had just qualified. And the chemistry between those two athletes is exceptional, right? And so I think where a brand can have a great relationship with an athlete, but get out of the way, and through something like Facebook Live, enable for that natural, organic interaction to come to life and actually create an opportunity where the consumer at home is able to engage with those athletes because we, Visa, are bringing access to that. That's the nail on the head, and I think those are things that we're trying with these Olympic Games that we haven't, I mean, just you think about how quickly these things evolve, weren't even available to us in London or even in Sochi. So I'm excited to kind of see how our own content generation strategy kind of rolls out and how fans engage.
And what you just said is the key. Being able to provide that value, the interaction, something that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, provide that value. But that's where I think a lot of brands are struggling. They're still looking at sports partnerships as a way into an audience to deliver the same messaging that they're doing everywhere else. And they're not understanding that the bigger opportunity is that passion. If we can figure out what makes that fan tick, and I think they're getting a lot of bad counsel, honestly. There's not enough people that are experts enough in the sports fan to say, here's how you win these people over, and they're coming into it with some really bad objectives that don't play out well on social.
Well, and part of the problem too is that, yes, there are a plethora of things available now in 2016 that did not exist in 2014, but brands are challenged because we have so many more things available, yet we're not stopping most of the things that we've been doing all along,
right,
save for maybe, print is down. But it is extremely challenging. It is logistically difficult to provide content, to scale that out across, not only different media channels, but within digital itself. You're now building content uniquely for Instagram, for Facebook, for YouTube, for OTT, and for Snapchat. And, a lot of brands, procurement departments, they like to see numbers go down. That costs more money. And so part of it is also not about just the expertise or the culture not living in there. It's that the media is changing faster than a lot of brands' abilities to make content correctly. And so we do have to lean on partners to do that. It's difficult right now.
And I'm sorry if I could just chime in real quickly. I think the traditional way of looking at right holders goes away in a very short amount of time. There's a lot of discussion in here today about the media companies, who's creating content. Ultimately, with technology the way that it is right now, it's the consumer that's creating the content. It's the community that's creating the content. It's the community that's letting brand marketers know this is what we want. So I would argue, rather than trying to create content for the community, pay more attention to the community and what they're actually creating and what they resonate, and do what you can to take advantage of these platforms to help support that.
That's a mindset shift, though, right? It's going from what is our brand equity, what is our brand message, what is our brand tone, to what do they want, and that's what we're seeing. And it's not just the brands; it's a lot of the you hear a lot of agencies talk about they're changing and they're evolving, but the creative they've hired platform experts that know that we have to have it under 90 characters, but they're not changing the creative process that starts with what is it that people are actually reacting to, and let's build a content strategy out of that, as opposed to here's what we need to communicate, how do we get this in front of as many people as possible. That's a total mindset shift.
Third lightning round question. I'm going a little off book here. Brandon, you can't answer this one because it involves Instagram. Which sport has the third largest audience on Instagram? And this is going to be a segue into our next longer discussion.
I have no clue.
Just throw something out there.
Baseball.
I will say, to be fair, we only released this like a week ago.
I'm going to say Premier League.
I'm going to go with football.
UFC.
I'll say esports.
You're closest, Sarah. It's combat sports, which is more than just UFC. But I found it to be really interesting. You had a lot of numbers that you were able to cite in our discussion. And I think that's a good segue into what we call emerging sports. You know, I think it's kind of strange to say this about the world's most popular sport, soccer, but I think in North America, it's an emerging sport. Esports is certainly an emerging sport. I don't even know if you can call MMA or UFC an emerging sport anymore. It's emerged, you know. But let's talk a little bit about the emerging sports space and the opportunity there. And I know, Dan, you have a very, you know, vested interest in esports. But let's talk about emerging sports in general, and we can start with esports.
Yeah, I mean, with esports in general, what I try to communicate to our clients is the audience is already there. 2015, esports had its breakout. The audience has been there for a number of years. There's a few 100 million people that are participating, but it's a very concentrated audience between, you know, men and young women between the ages of, say, 14 and 34. It's just mainstream media that's finally getting the attention of esports. So within esports in particular, there's a huge opportunity for brands to help mold that. Andy at Twitch is probably going to be upset because I'm going to rip one of his lines, but what esports needs right now more than anything is predictability. That's what the fans need more than anything. When more brand sponsors start getting involved because of the planning process, because of their needs, because of their communication needs, that then forces the publishers, the leagues, to organize in a way where they can start planning in advance. So that's just one of the ways where I think there's a huge opportunity for non-endemic brands to step into the space right now and really help esports evolve in a more organized way over the next couple of years.
And I'd say the same. I'll keep it short. I think, you know, looking at esports for us, we're just starting to understand the space ourselves on Instagram. But what we're seeing is the personalities are driving a lot of the content. So the teams themselves and the personalities, and the interaction you're seeing, and then putting that content on the platform and seeing the reaction, something we'll certainly be watching close the rest of this year.
I would actually think that esports, you know, Instagram would be one platform where it seems a little bit more difficult for that to translate, you know, into what people leverage Instagram most for.
Well, I'd say people come for passion and interests, right? And esports is clearly a growing passion and interest for teenagers, millennials, and they're already spending over 20 minutes a day with us on the platform, right? So every time they open the app, they're coming to find the things that they really want to see. And again, we're seeing a lot more esports content come up through the teams in particular, and increasingly through the leagues and through some of the media partners, whether you look at Turner and what they're doing in the space, and others.
Yeah, I would say what we tell our clients is don't get hung up on the particular esport. Don't get hung up on the particular game. Pay more attention to the lifestyle elements around it. And that's really where Instagram or Facebook or Twitter comes into play, because these individuals express themselves more through their lifestyle than they actually do through their sport, which is a major reason why a lot of folks in here are sponsoring, you know, some major stars in their respective sports. It's the lifestyle element outside of sports that they're attracted to.
I mean, yeah, I would have talked a lot about esports in this, except that, you know, it's now been 7 days since, you know, we've seen one of the most unusual phenomenons, I think, in digital, which is the first killer app in augmented reality. I'm talking about Pokemon Go, if everybody else is not aware of that, about to surpass Twitter in the number of daily active users. And, you know, this very well could be a fad. This could be over in a month. I think advertisers are now starting to rush in. You know, we're getting lots of inquiries about how we can use Pokemon Go to drive people to car dealers right now. So I'm sure advertisers, we kill this thing off in probably 4 weeks or so, who knows. But, you know, needless to say, esports has tremendous growth opportunity. Myself working with auto brands, nobody owns that space in an auto brand, and, you know, eventually somebody will. I do think to echo the point, there needs to be a way for brands to gain more accessibility to that marketplace. You know, I'm not going to call it disorganized, but for the echelons of marketing professionals where this is a completely foreign culture for most of us, it is going to have to become more accessible, I think, before significant investment happens. And that will happen over time, probably not very much time at all, but, you know, I would say we're still in infancy there. It's a global phenomenon, and it's one that obviously is born out of digital. And, you know, to the point of Instagram, Instagram's about community, esports is about community, so they will go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think one of the things for us, we're a global company. So when we think about emerging sports, you have to think about which region of the world you're talking about. And I think, in Europe, we sponsor Formula E. I mentioned that earlier. And I had a chance to go over to the Paris Formula E Grand Prix in April. And, what I saw there, I kind of went in a little bit dubious. Formula One, that's really big in Europe. How does Formula E translate? What are they trying to do? And, what I saw was there was a gaming component to it. There was just the fact that it was in one of the most iconic cities in the world and actually just going right through the downtown around Napoleon's tomb. I mean, those things more and more will be a draw for people. So I think sports where they're just able to be right in front of you even more is an interesting component. And I think the integration of the gaming aspect to it and having real life fan engagement where there was a fan winner that then was able to race off against the drivers real time during the break between heats and finals. Those kinds of things were really fascinating. I think, another part of that for us as a global partner of the World Cup, World Cup has an interactive World Cup. We've never activated it. It's something that we're looking at now. It takes place in New York City. That's a challenge for us because soccer, football is not as big in the United States. So instead, we're kind of thinking about it, okay, well, how do you make the interactive World Cup appeal to our clients, our consumers in other parts of the world to come to New York City? So lots of interesting components to that for us.
And you mentioned UFC and soccer. I'd love to touch on both because I agree with you that they should not be considered emerging sports, but they certainly should be sports that we all are paying attention to. In the month of June alone, it was hard not to be a fan of soccer. Between the Euros on ESPN and Copa America on Fox, we are Americanizing the internationalness of soccer, and it's a tremendous opportunity for us. I think between now and 2018, as we move into the next Men's World Cup, people will be paying attention to U.S. soccer more than they have, but more importantly, U.S. fans will be paying more attention to international soccer. And then I think it's worth noting on the UFC, when you get a $4 billion payout, it's hard to say that you're an emerging brand. Certainly, they've been very successful. They're a good partner, but what I would encourage you as brands to think about is they're really the most efficient place to reach young men. They're delivering the youngest median age, only tied with soccer, and then in terms of reaching that men 18 to 49, it's a fantastic platform. I think as brands, what we all are trying to encourage people to get comfortable with is just the perception that the UFC has, and to allow more brands that might have concerns about what UFC may or may not represent, and encourage them that it's a place that it's a really efficient audience and certainly offers tons of integration and brand opportunities.
Dan, we're out of time, so this is like your penance for going too long on the first lightning round question. We do have time for one last lightning round question, okay? Each of you gets to secure for free the marketing rights of any athlete in the world in perpetuity, obviously a hypothetical, which is another way of saying who's the world's most marketable athlete?
Seth Abner.
Ronaldo, #1 on Instagram.
You stole my line.
I'll go with Messi then.
I'm going to go with Jordan Spieth.
It's a good one. I like Steph Curry just because of the reaction people have to him.
Okay, well, I know I learned a lot from this panel and talking with them over the last weekend. I suspect most of you here learned quite a bit too. So thanks to our panel and thanks to all of you.
Thank you.